my God! Huge crisis, guys. I'm not exaggerating. You need to leave Australia right now. You need to go to a country that's safe, like Finland or Ukraine. It's so horrible I don't have words. Thankfully, this Redditor does. Is this even a democracy anymore? I mean, is that even a rhetorical question anymore? The two-party duopoly has killed democracy. Choice of weapon, changing donation and spending rules, so for the first time in history, there will be spending caps on elections. Of course. Who would have guessed that making moneyed interests have less influence in democracy would be its demise? Whoever misled us by saying democracy dies in darkness. False flag! It died in light! To explain how, let's all listen to this beautiful man.
What are we always asking for at this end of the chamber? Greater accountability, greater scrutiny, greater protection of the people. But do we get that? No. What we have is these two major parties protecting the big end of town, big government, the big bureaucracies, the big media, the big corporations and their mates in the big super funds. It's all about the establishment. On this side, you've got the command and control communists, and on this side, you've got the born to rule fascists. Doesn't matter what you do, the two major parties are only interested in controlling you, not serving you.
Those passionate anti-establishment words spoken by a man who, up until about a year ago, was part of the duopoly establishment and was begging at the time, "Please let me stay in the establishment, boss. I'll try and understand the big words better." But that was then. Now, coincidentally, right when he was bereft of options, he's joined the ragtag ranks of the crossbench, along with all the other brave free thinkers who have discovered that they too hate the establishment. Coincidentally, when they got rejected by it as well. I'm doing my part. Determined to give voice to those that have been forgotten by the majors. The hotheads, the fuckheads, the blockheads, the crackheads. In fact, the senator for crackheads, Lydia Thorpe, went nuclear over these donation reforms. She moved in a motion to rename it the Sham Democracy Bill. Take that, establishment. Senator for halal mining, Fatima Payman, said skibbity riz to that, and just for good measure, so did everyone's favourite Rhodesian landowning private school rugby boy, David Pocock. Admit, electoral reform and substitute reducing electoral competition to stitch up major party duopoly. That's real. Name calling. These are their big ideas. Name calling. That's something I do. These are the people you want elected to keep an eye on the government. How about we call the bill the, bum way poo democracy fuck you bill? Seconded. Yeah, so this sham democracy bill has really ruffled some feathers across the crossbench. They're convinced that this bill is going to kill every party except the majors. And personally, my only problem with that is still too many parties. When is Labor going to go the whole hog and make the Senate a replicate of the Chinese Congress? Oh, red to match the cushions, baby. Anyway, their opposition to this bill is really interesting because really what it shows is that the crossbench actually is a diverse array of opportunistic scum using the general good vibes people have towards the word independent to hide the fact that they are almost, without exception, dependent as fuck on a billionaire, suckling away at their fat tits, which, let's be honest...
Who wouldn't? I bet it's Tim Tam flavored.
Yep, it is, but it's all for Ralph. God, what I wouldn't give to one day be walking down the mall and seeing Clive Palmer shop at Johnny Big. Wouldn't that be fucking priceless? You know, his donations during the 2022 election made up 68% of all donations in that financial year. 2/3. One guy. Imagine how much damage that one guy could do if he wasn't a complete idiot. Because our current political donation laws can't do anything about that. Can't do anything to stop third parties and major industry groups like the Minerals Council from throwing millions at their preferred political party. The amount of political donations and gifts has exploded over the last 2 election cycles. So the fact that there's all these independent thinkers online who all coincidentally have the same independent thoughts, like, these reforms are just going to give us a political system like America? No, not passing these reforms. That is what is going to give us a political system like America, because like America, the amount of money being spent on elections keeps exploding every cycle. But unlike America, we actually have a chance to stop that, because this bill lowers the disclosure threshold for gifts from $16,900 to $5,000. It puts a cap on how much you can spend on an election. It puts a cap on those bullshit third-party groups like Concerned Dads of Queensland Who've Had Enough. We've had enough! For the first time ever, you are going to have information on what those shell groups actually are, because it makes a bunch of under-the-hood changes like reporting campaign spending, requiring parties to have federal campaign accounts so that they can't use state-based party accounts to game the donation caps, increasing the amount of public funding parties and candidates receive, which if we were dealing with any other type of voter, that would address their concerns. But we're dealing with the independent thinker crowd, and they are all so bad at thinking that their main argument seriously is the major parties get $90 million while independents only get $800,000. Come on, you can do this. How many seats do major parties run in as opposed to independents who run in one? No, you're just going to keep regurgitating that? Oh, that's okay. Maths is hard, isn't it, Kat? They keep perpetuating this myth that you can move money to get around the $800,000 cap. You can't. Sorry, I know it's a nightmare scenario where yet again Labor is introducing world-leading reform. It truly is awful that these changes will make Australia one of the most transparent nations on earth. The very thing the self-imposed main characters of the story, the independents, the self-advertised warriors of transparency were up until recently railing against. Now they're railing against transparency. Why? Because of a bunch of lies they made up, apparently, claiming it was cooked up in the back rooms of Liberal and Labor HQ. It wasn't. These are all recommendations that came from a report by the Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters, which you see how much harder my job is than the rest of the new media. Every other channel just gets to go. Both major parties are bought by corporations. Let's support the crossbench who are fighting to keep corporate money in politics. Sign up to my Patreon. It's such an easy narrative. All I have to do is reheat and feed it to their 60 IQ audience. Fuck the majors. Well, I have to try and explain what the fucking Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters is. That's the problem with trying to be honest with your audience. Being honest is boring. It's really, really boring. Sign up to my Patreon. This is why every time I hear someone say, the public are fed up with politics as usual. Are they? Or are they just fed endless bullshit by moneyed interests, and moneyed interests have figured out that the new angle is to say fuck politicians and moneyed interests while further entrenching moneyed interests and different, better politicians? Because I bet you didn't even know that there is a committee that runs inquiries into how the last election went and reports back to Parliament with a bunch of recommendations that the government takes on notice and uses them to draft new legislation to keep making elections fairer and fairer. That's politics as usual. It's a good, completely uncontroversial system. Just because you don't know what it is doesn't mean it's being secretly hidden from you. It just means that you live in an age where you couldn't possibly give a shit because you have endless awesome distractions like Yoshi's Woolly World to contend with. But they hold public inquiries. Anyone can make a submission. Anyone. Here's one from the 2022 inquiry that I picked at random. This is real. I just received an email from Liberal Party HQ saying the government is considering giving the vote to Kiwis. I emphatically disagree with this proposal. I emphatically disagree with this proposal, as I consider quite a lot of native Kiwis as stupid and belligerent. There are plenty living in this country, and it alarms me they could get the vote. If they're Aussie naturalised citizens, okay, I will have to go with it reluctantly. I am not being racist. Regards. You see? That man's thoughts were considered. Why is it important to point out that that man was heard? So you can understand how malicious, hypocritical, self-serving and stupid the so-called independents really are. Kate Chaney complaining about how the electoral reform bill is rushed through Parliament instead of being sent to a committee.
It is outrageous that this bill is not going to an inquiry. The government and the coalition won't agree on anything. Why do you think they agree on this? It is the biggest reform to our electoral system in 40 years. It took 6 months to draft, but apparently it doesn't need any scrutiny.
This 16th century puppet is a full member of the Electoral Matters Committee. She contributed her own response to the committee's report for the 2022 election. Can you imagine what a snake you would have to be to say with your straight marionette face, rushed through, needs to be sent to a committee? She's not even unique in her lying. This point is chorused by the crossbench, most of which were involved either as participating members or made their own submissions to the Electoral Matters Committee, which is how this bill was crafted, from the Electoral Matters Committee. And yet they're all making the claim that the bill was rushed. rushed as it gets passed in the dying days of the parliamentary term. Oh, I'm sorry, what wouldn't be rushed to you bozos? To wait until the government goes into caretaker mode? To wait for Homo sapiens to evolve to the next form of ape? These are the people Australia thinks, yeah, they're going to hold the majors to account. The ones that blatantly lie for personal advantage. Underline personal, because the same type of loser that's always saying, every time you make the shocking assertion that the government might actually do things in the public's benefit from time to time, they will say, oh, you just put party above country, and then feel genuinely smug voting for people like Kate Cheney, who puts herself above the country. As usual, hiding it in a cocoon of lies. Well, Labor didn't consult with them when they were drafting the actual bill. No, they did. The independents got the bill months before it was voted on. It's not rushed just because they read at a second grade level. Apparently, they weren't happy with the detail in these meetings and the fact that they had to, how fucking Karen is this? Meet with staffers instead of the author of the bill, Don Farrell himself, a couple of those times. Wow. Tell me you represent the northern suburbs of Sydney without telling me. Literally the I want to speak to your manager meme. The strangest part of it all is, according to Labor, they thought they were having constructive meetings with the crossbench, but they kept doing media spots complaining about the bill right after meeting with them, which reminds me of someone, but I just can't quite work out who. But seriously, like, if that is the negotiation process, you really have to ask yourself, if you're running to the media to slam a bill and demonise it as a major party stitch-up, did you really ever have any sincere intention of constructively working on the bill? That's not a rhetorical question. The answer is obviously no. And yet the usual whinge merchants, uncritically megaphoning these lies. Oh, the major party snuck in the bill under the radar with no scrutiny. And the bill has tons of loopholes that the major parties can exploit, like printing party-only material in an electorate and donating money through associated member organisations. Juice Media, the Australia Institute, the ABC, these great bastions of accountability all regurgitated these lies without the faintest skerrick of due diligence, obviously didn't read the legislation. It clearly states, if the electoral matter to which the expenditure relates is express coverage matter for more than one division, state or territory, that share of the expenditure that reasonably reflects the distribution of the electoral matter in the division, state or territory. In plain English, if a party tried to actually line the highways with vote party placards that didn't have a name on them, the cost of that would count towards the expenditure cap in that electorate. Spending by party affiliated candidates counts towards the party's federal cap. So no matter how you slice it, political parties can't circumvent the caps just by putting their brand on a billboard and not the candidate's name. I mean, even on the face value of that argument, doesn't it sound like if you were just like, if you say Candyman 3 times in the mirror, he like comes and kills you? Really? Yeah. Well, that's going on the homepage. Just a child's level urban legend. Clearly dumb. Clearly a lie, regurgitated ad nauseum by the traditional and new media. And let's just put aside that the Independent's entire shtick is politics done differently. Didn't know lying as soon as it was remotely expedient to do so was new to politics, but for all the journalists and satirical geniuses using the power of comedy to expose the truth, do you think any of them will actually expose it? Now that it's overwhelmingly obvious that, sorry, your great truth-seeking capacities of repeating what politicians say whose vibe you like isn't the same as the truth, how many of them will tell the truth? I'm guessing none. Instead, now that it has been proven embarrassingly wrong on a legislation level, they're just going to move to the tired trope of if Liberal and Labor agree on something, it's got to be bad. I saw that comment about 500 times last time I talked about this. God, I hate that, because that is stupid even for them. 70% of bills in Parliament have Labor and Liberal support, and they're not remotely controversial. They are just basic running the country maintenance like supply bills or updating words on old legislation. I didn't know these humdrum bills were bad, but now that we have the cheat sheet, they are, because Labor and Liberals support them. One small glitch in the matrix though, what does the cheat code say when the crossbenchers side with the Liberals to block legislation? Because they did it on this exact legislation. What's the rule then? When the crossbench side with the Liberal Party, it's automatically good, but when the Labor Party sides with the Liberal Party on that same legislation, it's automatically bad. I love how Team I Don't Have a Team are the most partisan supporters there are, while their entire identity is based around I'm not partisan, I don't pick a team. But look at this shit.
Was it 2.1 million that you spent at the last election. Senator Pocock.
Misleading the Senate. You can't just make numbers up. I'm happy to hear the facts of it, but you can't just pull numbers out.
They are the facts. I hate to say it.
Senator Pocock on a point of order.
Misleading the Senate. I'd ask them to withdraw. $1.7 million.
I'm not the adjudicator of the facts.
You say the figure is 1.7, not 2.1. Is that your point? Okay, well, let's accept that. For the point of argument tonight, let's accept your figure of $1.7 million. In the whole history of time of elections in the Australian Capital Territory, no Senate candidate has ever spent anything like $1.7 million to get themselves elected. No candidate has ever done that.
The real reason these people think the electoral reform bill is bad is because the donation and spending caps mean that the media class's favourite politicians won't get as much money from Climate 200 and their billionaire backer Simon Holmes at court. I really cannot stress what an astonishing backflip this is. This is the same group of idiots who used to get so smug and self-righteous about there being money in politics, now being just as smug and indignant about keeping money in politics. As soon as they realise that getting money out of politics would mean that they too would have to give up their billionaire backers, that's it. That's all that's happening here. While they and their supporters clutch at straws to try and somehow hold on to the now completely exposed false construction of an ego that they're morally superior to the rest of Australia, the fact that anyone would fall for such an obvious, hopelessly transparent ruse honestly makes me wish it was the end of democracy. This might be peak hypocrisy. No one who is actually a struggling independent is calling this a stitch up. Real independents like Rebecca Sharkey, who you've never heard of, precisely because she doesn't have a billionaire backer unlike fucking David Pocock and Monique Ryan. She got elected off the back of a $40,000 campaign back in 2016, just shy of the $800,000 cap.
My first election cost me, I think, roughly about $40,000 to run.
Wonder why she doesn't have a problem with it. She unseated a cabinet minister, and then she held it against a child of the Downer dynasty. Remember Curly here? Someone related to this male grandma. What does she think about it? Despite this bill not being perfect, I'm of the view that, on balance, it will provide greater transparency and more timely information regarding political donations. It will strengthen the Electoral Commission, and it will cap the amounts that can be donated and spent. Australians will go to the polls knowing what each candidate and each party have spent on their campaign. At the very least, if they think it is excessive, or that it represents the purchase of influence, they may choose to vote accordingly. But the press don't like to highlight that part. Maybe the it's not perfect part, because nothing ever is. But what the press really like to highlight are the lies that are backed by the billionaires. One of them, who has already said that unpicking these laws will be a big factor in deciding who to support if there is a hung parliament. Wow, it's going to be so good having a minority government after the election, where the idea of limiting how much money they can spend at election time is so egregious to them that not being backed by a billionaire is a red line for them. They can't tell their voters that, because that's not great for their progressive independent image. No, to be openly relying on several key donors to run a multi-million-dollar campaign. So they just pull a leaflet out of the Greens playbook. The reason we're not supporting it is because it's not good enough? Yeah, that's why. Do our voters really buy that? They do? Holy fuck, the Greens have figured it out. The bottom line is the electoral reform bill is about getting big corporate money out of politics and restricting the amount of money that can be dumped into political campaigns each election cycle by lobbyist groups and fat billionaires, regardless of what their politics are. I'm annoyed it won't be in place for this year's election. Instead, thanks to the Teals and a pliant media class who genuinely think that multi-millionaires bankrolling political candidates is totally cool, as long as those multi-millionaires are culturally similar to them and don't give them the ick like Clive does. This is what's really scaring me about the direction of this country. Redditors love constantly comparing us to America. What you are seeing here is the slow suffocation of the party of unions to be replaced with a Hillary Clinton-style Democrats. Make no mistake about it, the elite class would absolutely love it if the major parties in this country were the Liberals and the Teals. And that's why they're fighting so hard to keep money in politics. But what I'm shocked by is how easily the usual losers on Twitter and Reddit have been duped by this, purely because it was dressed in anti-establishment vibes. Anyway, I'll see you next week where I'll think of more reasons to hate my core audience. It won't be hard. Don't forget to hate me back!